Hello, BookTube, and I'm here for a video, a little more detailed video for New Worlds November, the first week. And the first week for the theme was terrestrial. And this was not a planned read. After reading Arthur C. Clarke's The Childhood's End, I decided to read this to refresh myself with the story rather than the film, because it's been a long time since I read the short story. And also, it's going to be sort of a short story to film as well. And the story that I'm talking about is A Farewell to the Master, written by Harry Bates, that was published in Astounding 1940. And I read it out of this collection, um, famous science fiction stories, Adventures in Time and Space. It originally was published as basically excuse me, Adventures in Time and Space, edited by Raymond J. Healy and J. Francis McComas. In 1946, it was the second anthology that was published, a science fiction anthology that was published by a big publisher at the time. And this is a 1957 modern library giant for this, and it's almost 30. Well, it's 35 stories, but almost 1,000 pages long. Now, the one there's a few interesting connections here, just with the book itself. J. Francis McComas became co-editor with Anthony Boucher for the magazine of fantasy and science fiction a few years after this was originally published. And Harry Bates, the author of Farewell to the Master, was editor of Astounding in the mid-30s, a few sort of years prior to John W. Campbell taking over. It was a sort of a fractious period for most publishing and for the world during the 30s. Everybody will know uh, because of the Great Depression. Uh, and for Astounding, it survived, but it was a fractious period for, and there's a bit of contention of Harry Bates's editorship there, but he remembers it as that, he brought the magazine into sort of teenage years, and then he looked at it that way, and then Campbell brought it into adulthood. But yeah, this is 1940, so this was published in Astounding when John W. Campbell, in his first couple of years as editor. And it's for here, the editors say they had, it was clearly, agreement that it's a great story. It's a bit of a first contact story. Well, it is a first contact story, where a spaceship just literally appears in Washington D.C. It doesn't fly in; it just appears, and a human comes out with a huge robot, and somebody shoots the human, practically almost immediately when he begins to talk, and he dies. And the robot sort of just stays where he was, like frozen in the area. So they build, it's just at the Smithsonian, so they build a building over top of the spaceship. They're trying to find out what the metal is made out of, for the ship and the robot. They've done everything. They've tried heat. They've blasted it. They shot at it, and they have a research center there as well. But they allow people in to sort of gawk and take a look at everything. And the protagonist of the story is a photographer, a newspaper photographer, and he's taking pictures, and he realizes, because they think the robot has never moved since the seconds after this alien was shot and killed. Um, and like everybody feels bad about this because it was sort of a lone gunman type thing, and they gave him sort of honorary burial and so forth. But this photographer, by taking photos, he realizes that the robot has actually moved, and nobody has sort of seen this or realized this. So he hides away and stays overnight because he figures, well, it must be happening at night. And he's right. The robot moves, and sort of really strange things happen. He also forgets to take pictures, as you would, I guess. And like a bird flies out of the spaceship, and then later a gorilla, and is going berserk. And there's other robots around there, like humans have some robots, So it is a futuristic. They don't give the year as far. He doesn't give a year as far as I can tell, but the bird and the gorilla die. Well, it attacks the um, the robot, the big robot, but he doesn't know what's going on, and the next morning they come, and well, he gets out, and they, the military are asking him what's going on and everything like this, because he's witnessed this. And they're a bit scared because they don't want, because they know the power of this robot and this technology. Anyway, he hides back again, and he realizes, and when he finds out, he goes into the spaceship, that the robot has reanimated or created a new Klatu. That's the alien's name, and he's done this by a machine. Like he was able to steal. Like he's already created another human as well, but they seem to die very quickly. And he does this. He takes the essence from film that a newsreel that was taken. However, it's not detailed enough for the for the creation to last any length of time. So the guy says, well, you need the original equipment, everything that was recorded on the original recording. And so he winds up getting it for him. And like he's going to, the robot's going to revive him, I guess, on the way home, or when they get home, wherever home is. And it's a little funny because the robot does, well, in the film too, but the robot doesn't speak. But the robot has the name of Gnut, Gnut, or Newt, I guess. And the photographer, leans over, well, tells the robot at the end, like the whole reveal and this is a spoiler, but you can't get around this because of what the story is. But he says, tell your master that we didn't mean to kill him. And the robot says, well, no, they're aware that it was just one person, so they're not going to hold it against all of humanity. And then he says, but you're mistaken, basically. Klatu's not the master, he is. And that's the big reveal at the end, that the robots are the masters of these beings, or the alien Klatu. So, and that was a pretty big story. And then in 1951, it was made by 20th Century Fox into a film directed by Robert Wise, starring Michael Rennie, Patricia Neal. Sam Jaffe plays sort of a Einstein-like character in there. Patricia O'Neill's character is totally made up. Nothing comparable in the story, really. And a lot of it is. But this is 1951. This is the sort of beginning of the Cold War era, or things were gearing up. Now there were two, I think, great films that year that that used the as the basis or the background of Cold War. There's a few others that were done extremely well also later, but these were some of the first ones, and then so many of the others sort of patterned the view after the scare of nuclear proliferation, or well, the fear of the Russians as well. And that's what this was, geared for. The Day the Earth Stood Still film, and it was written that way, that Klatu is coming to Earth to give a an ultimatum to humans because he's seeing that they got warfare. Nuclear weapons, and he tells them, you need to, not bring it, not use it in conflict and so forth, and be peaceful. Otherwise, if you don't, see, and they call him Gort in the film. The robot basically is the masters, and they run things because those aliens can't, because they have been naughty children in a sense, and they're being they're the masters, as in the story. That's about as far as it goes for the story, that was taken from the story. But also, too, the screenplay was written with, and it was like, well, they hoped at times, like, or some of them had hoped that it would be really subtle, but it's not very subtle. However, people do watch it and don't catch this. Klaatu, like, he's Christ. He's a Christ figure because he's coming to Earth with a message, and he gets killed, and then he's resurrected. And he also, there's other themes where he takes a coat of a colonel or something, carpenter, and there's a lot of things not so subtle for this. However, the Breen office, which was the censorship board at the time that had replaced the Hayes by this time, and it was basically, I think, Joseph Breen was the person in charge. Didn't like the fact that the robots and the aliens were so advanced, and not just advanced, that they were able to bring back life to Klaatu. So they forced an interpolation, a line that Patricia Neal says, does Gort have, ultimate power over life and death? And Klaatu says, no, it's only temporary, and the, life and death, the power of life and death is left for the Great Spirit. So they had to put that in because they thought it would be a bit blasphemy. But as I say, it's a fabulous film, but hardly, like, only little bits of it were taken from the story, actually. And I like the story. I'm not so sure that they praise it so much, because it's a bit tedious in some ways reading the story because of this photographer, and it's like, like he admonishes himself for not taking pictures and stuff, but it's like, well, that's his job. It should be second nature. He should have the camera in his hand, regardless of how scared he is or anything like that. So that didn't really ring true, but it is a great ending, and that's what it's leading up to, is that they're not, the robots are the masters. Because they've been, they don't really quite say what the reason is, and that's where the film rolls it out, and it's working on different levels. It's, like, for peace, but also Cold War thing, a reaction against nuclear proliferation or nuclear, armament. and also, the level of the Christ figure, which Klatu was. And there's great scenes. It was filmed mostly in the studio, but there were location shots in Washington D.C. But they, instead of the ship just sort of appearing, it sort of flies in. It's shown at the beginning of the film to be more dramatic. I think it is because everybody sort of sees it. And yeah, I loved the film, and it's it spawned like this. The era spawned dozens and dozens and dozens of sort of reaction to the Cold War, uh, in sort of science fiction films, schlocky science fiction films. But there's a few that aren't so schlocky, that really were that tried to get it right and do things a lot better. And I really think that Day the Earth Still is one of those. And no, it may not have aged all that well, but that's not the point of it. It's of its time. It was remade, I guess, sometime in the '90s, but we'll just sort of pass that over. It had Keanu Reeves in it, which was reason enough for me not to watch it. Uh, but yeah, it's a great film, and the reason why, as I said, I reread the story was because after reading um, Childhood's End, and I'll go more into detail with this when I talk about Childhood's End. It's basically that when I was reading this Childhood's End, which Arthur C. Clarke wrote in 1954. One of the reasons for the aliens coming is, because Earth is, or the humans are starting to, use nuclear weapons and could destroy themselves, and they want this thing, and I'll describe it more in the other video of this evolution to happen before they destroy themselves. And I kind of was wondering, did he it's like that's the message in the film of A Day the Earth Stood Still, and but I couldn't remember. Like, I had a feeling like it's not in the story, but it's not in the story. Sort of, it's implicit. It's suggested, possibly, if you want to look at it that way. But so that's why I read the story. But then I sort of also remembered, and I had to look this up to verify it, that Arthur C. Clarke thought Day the Earth Stood Still was one of his favorite films. So I can't help but think that this aspect of the message of alien intervention, to stop nuclear proliferation, and also being in 1954, the Childhood's End is in the midst of the Cold War as well. So that was the fear at the time. So there is a connection between these two, and there's the connection of the First Contact as well, which will be a separate video as well of all the stories that I read during the first week of New Worlds, November. But anyway, that's my sort of rambling view of the alternate universe or parallel universe for New Worlds for November. And have you read any and explored any other media? I'd love to hear. Take care, BookTube.